Hello, everyone. My name is Andréa Richardson, and welcome to another episode of Disrupt, Delete, Reset. I am here with my co host, Taryn.
Williams Clark. Hi, everyone.
Taryn Williams Clark, that's right. And we have an extremely special guest for you today. In a moment, Taryn will introduce him. But first, have you ever thought about whether or not fear limits your ability to really do what you really are purposed to do in life? Today, we're going to talk about fear or fearlessness. Taryn, over to you.
So today we have a very special guest with us. Today we have Terrence Chappell, the principal of Chappell Communications Group, which is a social and digital firm working at the intersection of humor-centered stories and advocacy. Thank you so much for joining us, Terrence.
Thank you,
Hi, Taryn.
Taryn.
Thanks for having me. Hi, Andrea. I love that
Hi.
introduction. I feel so important. Maybe it's
You
official.
are. You are important. Everyone's important. Even you all watching this and listening, you're important too. Uh,
Totally.
so let's talk about being important. But sometimes, what goes into that important part of what Andrea just said. So it's really this idea of whether to live in fear or to live in fearlessness. Like that is the question. How does one move in life? And Terrence, as an entrepreneur, owning his successful agency for I think nearly a decade. I think we're getting close to that, as well as just navigating in life as the wonderful person he is, would be a perfect guest to join us today. So with that, Terrence, you know what? As the guest of honor, we're going to kick the first question off to you. So as we talk about this idea of living in fear or fearlessness, let's talk about fear versus truth, right? Because sometimes those things are going to get muddled. Um, the question is like, is it better to live in fear or is it vice versa to just kind of stepping in your own as a fearless person? Like, what are your thoughts on it?
Ooh, that's a really good first question. I would say I immediately think of what my mom would say to my sister and I, and what I still go by is to not operate from a place of fear, to not make decisions from a place of fear. So over the years, I've learned, and I'm still learning, um, of how to use fear as just information, um, how to, how to, kind of what am I afraid of? And what is the information trying to tell me? Kind of like reframing what fear means. And what I've learned or what I continue to learn is every single time that I've made it like a knee jerk decision from a place of fear, it has never, ever, ever worked out in my favor. And when I feel like, at least for me, when you declare war on your fear, you're like, I'm not going to be afraid, and no, 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 and fear is a natural emotion, and again, it's information, and what I'm learning is to lean into that. It's because there might be some useful information there. You might should be afraid of something, but but every single time when I did not operate from a place of fear, and I've kind of just kind of recalibrated and reset, and in those moments when you can do that is because you don't always have the privilege of that time or space. But when I'm kind of lean into my instincts, which came
Mhm.
from not operating from a place of fear, it something what I wanted, something better happened. It didn't work out. It made space for something else, or I didn't care about it anymore.
Yeah. You talked about how you utilize fear as like information. I guess through your own sort of journey in life, navigating various identities, an entrepreneur, a black man, a son. Like, how do you know, like, how do you tap into yourself to know when fear is either limiting you or it's because they say sometimes you need a certain amount of fear to do well. How do
Mhm.
you know when fear is limiting you or when it is essentially propelling you towards your destiny?
That's another great question. So I would say I've to share like an anecdote when I've had Sorrel Communications Group for about 6 years now. But I started off as like as a consultant, i.e., I got fired from my job, and so I was a consultant. So that's what
You
it
want to
is
be the first or the last.
now. For real. And so at the agency that I was at, I remember I was working with a bunch of white women, and I remember being very fearful not to come across too aggressive, or I remember prioritizing the trope of an angry black man over actually, and it prevented me to lead. So that's the part that's the part that I own. It was some other politics going on, and usually, it's some of everyone. And so for my part, I remember being in meetings and not speaking up about experience that I had because I either was afraid of cutting someone off, I didn't want to come across like I was contrarian, and it was very limiting. And and I when that happens, I told myself I will never do that again. I will never, ever, ever. If you're wrong about something, you're wrong about something. You own up to it. Say, you know what? That was the wrong move. How can we optimize based on these key learnings moving forward? So I would say in the kind of the business industry and being an entrepreneur, I you have to have the temerity to like go on these boardrooms, go on some of these Zoom calls and lead, and not be afraid to lead is because I can't go into these meetings and leading these campaigns being, oh, I don't know what you think. And so for me, I've been able to sharpen my instincts, and I trust myself a lot more. And
Yeah.
it took me operating from a place of fear to learn to know how that looks like and how that feels. And I think
Mhm.
there's a really good balance of you know getting the information, but not operating or managing yourself in a way that's very limiting. And I remember that feeling, and that will never ever I will ever happen to me again.
I have a question. When you said a couple of things, strong points in there, Andrea. I hope you caught some of them. One place you just said about getting the information. You just said that about like operating from a place of fear. When you say get the information, does that mean like going internally and collecting like oneself data to assess the situation and go like, I don't feel good. This sucks. This person is a butthole. I did
Mhm.
not curse. Did not curse,
You're
team.
trying your
That's
best.
right. Is a butthole, and using that as the data when you say taking the information and assessing, okay, this is how I will not end up in a situation again because I was able to receive. I want you to talk about a little bit more about your journey, about how you collected that data to make sure you're not collecting the data to make sure to like, okay, I recognize this as fear. I don't like this. I can get rid of this. Let me turn this into fearlessness so I won't get in this situation again. I also would love to hear from Andrea if she's ever encountered data collection, is what we'll call it.
Absolutely. So I would say for me, it takes knowing yourself, and that just takes time. So I will say in the professional sense, I didn't really, when I graduated December 2007. I was a magazine journalism major.
Oof, oof, oof.
I'm
Girl,
still
you
got
don't
I
look
can
a
still got
day over
PTSD.
you don't look a day over 25,
Korean
honey.
beauty. I saw
Thank you,
the Korean
thank
beauty
you.
what you mean, okay.
Hydration,
Sorry, we gotta stay on track. Sorry, we got time. Go ahead, continue. Go
That
ahead.
hydration
skincare.
and boundaries, yes.
Yes, yes, fresh.
But I would say that I couldn't find a job. It was the Great Recession, and so when I finally did, my first official job was working at Walgreens on the corporate side. And I remember I was like a fish out of water, and I was very fearful, and I was very afraid to be I didn't know myself. I didn't know myself professionally, so I would mimic and copy what I thought where corporate was, and it felt like I was putting my left shoe on my right foot, and it wasn't. It just was like it was just awkward. But I do remember having a very good boss at the time, and he was a younger white guy, and he was a very just very patient, gave me a lot of grace, and kind of like empowered me to just like speak up in these meetings. And so then I went to Burrell Communications, was still trying to do the same thing, just didn't know myself. And so like once I got to know myself in this context, is in like, hey, I'm not a person that's very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a bulldog in meetings. But I'm also
Mhm,
not a person that's very meek. So I had to find my own style in navigating, managing up, managing laterally, managing more junior
mm,
teams. I had to find my way of saying no, but providing context. And that's work that I had to do outside of professional settings and my romantic relationships and my relationships with my family, is because it's there's some commonality here. So like once I got to know myself a little bit more, got more comfortable in my own skin and more confident, it was a lot it just flowed and streamlined a lot better. It felt, I didn't doubt myself as much. I mean, you still we're human, so there is a little there is like sometimes some like, oh, was that okay? But like it doesn't it just stays there. It doesn't make it doesn't make it way into a meeting. It doesn't make it way into a deck. It doesn't make it way into a project. It just kind of stays with me, and then perking like that, and then also listening to folks. So like listening to yourself and also listening to what folks are saying and the subtext of it. So I would say it definitely starts with self-awareness and doing the work to get to know yourself. Because I don't know any good leader who doesn't know themselves. That's the difference between being a leader and then just managing folks.
Mm.
Yeah. I could basically go on and on about the leader versus manager. Some people are great at both, some people are great at neither, which I've said many times. I'm going to answer your question about data collection because you also want me to answer too, Taryn. But in a minute, I want you guys to start thinking because I want to get up in your business a little bit because you two are friends.
Yeah.
And I want you to each think of a moment when you saw the other person really be fearless and it made you proud. So think
Mhm.
about that for a second.
Oh
But going
God.
back to your question, Taryn, on data collection, Terrence, you said a whole lot of things that reminded me of this idea of life being a stage. And sometimes it gets to be very exhausting to feel like you have to be the person that's non threatening, agreeable, polished all the time. And not that you're supposed to be unprofessional in professional spaces or you're supposed to be a jerk to your partner, but sometimes it gets to feel like you're putting on a performance. And when
Mhm.
that becomes exhausting, I think we start to have to take that data collection that you talked about, right? And determine like, how is this data causing me to essentially reinvent myself? And is it reinventing in a way that's harming me, right? Am I
Mhm.
losing my own identity? And so I've been trying to do a lot of like self awareness work as it relates to that because sometimes it can become like a role, right? And it becomes a performance for you to always be on stage. And to your point earlier, Terrence, just wanting to make sure that you're not showing up or being viewed as an angry person or a
Mhm.
confrontational person, et cetera. But I said a lot there. So back to my question regarding fearlessness. Has there been a time through your friendship, whether in a work setting or a personal life, that you've seen, for example, Terrence? Have you seen Taryn be fearless? Have you seen him be fearless? What are your examples?
I'll jump in here, even though I know I'm not the guest, but I want to jump in here anyway. So, as Andre has mentioned, I've known Terrence for over dang,
I
oof,
know.
a long time,
The
long time, the
1900s? No, I'm just kidding.
1900s. So I've known him quite some time. No, I think I can be honest. I've known him over 20 years. I mean, we are only 29, so don't worry. But no, I've known him over 20 years, and so I have a plethora of examples. I'm gonna give a kind of a larger idea of living in fear, fearlessness, and Terrence. I hope this is okay.
Yeah, no
And team, if you don't happen to see this, this means he told me to cut it out. But more so, I've seen Terrence grow from college to where he is now. And this is more of a personal story, like just him navigating his 20s. And I'm going to use a word that he used, and I hope that's okay, like kind of this angry black trope. And I know he was navigating through a lot of exploration in his 20s. And Terrence can don't be fooled by the clear skin and the big smile and hair. Don't do it. Don't cross them. Don't
those are the ones you
Those are the
gotta look out
nines.
for.
Don't step back
don't
out.
cross them. But I know I have personally seen how that fear of almost kind of like being locked in this like box has stifled him and how he would react. But in that, over the last several years, I've seen the work that he's put in himself and removing that idea of fear of like, okay, I have to be this person, I have to react this way, and really stepping into his own and saying, like, I'm Terrence Chappell. I'm a partner, I'm a friend, I'm a uncle, I'm all these wonderful things, and I'm not letting anyone stop me. So that's where that fearlessness that I see comes out of Terrence. It really
Thank
is
you.
just no longer letting things that don't serve him. So deleting the things that no longer served him, the people, the attitudes, the behavior, removing it, and resetting himself to who he is today. And it's just been a beautiful journey for me to
That's
see.
beautiful.
Thank
You love
you.
your friend.
Mm.
She loves you. I can feel the
Thank
love in this
you.
room.
I wish he could get his eyebrows done. We'll keep that in. We'll talk this
Oh,
later episode.
wow. Guys,
You know
you have
what? You were
listen,
doing so
listen,
well.
I have been breaking these two apart and causing them not to fight because they've been battling over eyebrows. I don't know what it is. Something happened within the last 20 years.
Terrence, your turn.
Taryn, be
Or-
nice.
No, okay.
That was beautiful. Thank you for saying that. I want to begin with saying this. I would not Taryn got me my first job. I got my first big corporate client because of Taryn. I got one of my this big like sponsorships for my side client because of Taryn. So like Taryn has been so and continues to be so. I need to read more. What's the word I'm looking for? It continues to be so instrumental to like my evolution as a professional. And so when you ask me the question, like whenever I've seen her being fearless, that's just her. And
Yeah.
Taryn used to actually be one of the people I would mimic in meetings, and it would just be kind of off because like Taryn, at least my impression, just always knew who she was professionally. She just always did, and I admired that, and that's one of the reasons I'm friends with people because they have a quality that I want, and so I would say I'm trying to think of I remember when we were doing our Burrell days, and people will remain nameless, but we were navigating and kind of working with a really difficult boss, and so back then, I would just kind of like shut down, not say anything. But Taryn, you were really good at kind of redirecting her and like kind of level setting her and kind of professionally putting in her place. And at that time, I just, I didn't have the confidence. I didn't even have the language at that time, and I just didn't know how to do that. And so, I would say that. But I've seen that over and over and over again, and it's just, and I was almost jealous. It's like, is this girl born with this? Like, where did this come from? Like, how can I get it?
Maybe
So I
she's
would
born
say-
with it.
Or maybe it's my parents, but no.
It's Gwen. It's all Gwen. Yeah, but that's Taryn's mom, and that's my play. That was my play mom. But I would say like throughout all what you do, all what you do, and if I've never, at least from the outside looking in as a friend, I've never seen you operate from a place of fear.
Thank you so much, Terrence. And actually, sorry, it's
Don't
actually making my
cry.
eyes water. I can share this. Like this is a part of my journey, and Terrence brought up my mother who passed away in 2018, and she was my heart. She was my best friend. And you talking about like fear, like she is what made me fearless. But when she died, I was lost. You talking about fear, like it was. I didn't know how I was going to navigate. I didn't know how I was going to navigate. Um, but the one beautiful thing I learned about her, and I think this is the tip that I would like everybody to take, is to live in fear, fearless. That is something that has to come from inside, but it also could be around every single person that's in your orbit. Like, and going back to my mom, like she taught me how to find good people. That included Terrence. She didn't get a chance to meet Andréa, but I know she would have loved Andréa. And, if you're ever trying to figure out if you are living in fear or living in fearlessness, and you're not sure, make sure check your tribe because you also want to
Yeah.
encourage other people too to live in fear and fearlessness. This is not a community of one,
Mhm.
right? And I think that's my biggest thing is to live in fear and fearlessness. Sometimes you just don't know. Sometimes we just don't know, and that's okay. You may not have the tools, but that's why you look to your loved ones. You look to the examples of the strong people. Even if you don't know someone, you look to your favorite celeb and who just seems like they're just moving along. Like, I think for me, that's the important thing. Like, to live in fear and fearlessness, you don't know. It depends on the time, but it's also important about looking at your orbit and being
Absolutely.
uplifted to help people get through.
You're definitely the people. I remember I would call you. Like, they put me in charge of $1 million budget, and I didn't. I don't. I was barely good at algebra, and so I remember turning to Terrence like, "What do I do? How do you do? How do you do like late night?" I remember that because Taryn, you had the big boy job. You were the first one to get a job, and in the 2000s, I was had to run these streets. But I'm
And
digressing.
you still run the streets. That hasn't changed.
That's true.
Oh man, that was a good one,
Not
Andrea.
you unloading the secrets that he's still running the streets. Terrence, meet me
Andrea run the
outside.
streets too,
Meet
y'all.
me
They
outside.
both run the streets. Y'all probably run the streets too. Tell us where y'all gonna run the streets in your respective city.
Well, we like to think of it as being
They're not
socialized.
fearless. They're not fearless in the
Exactly.
streets. Wait, no, that sounds like that's about to go a bad way. Sorry, I'm gonna touch something.
I mean,
That's not
lost
that
in
type
the
of
streets.
podcast, y'all.
let's
Not yet. Okay, pull it back.
let's reel it on in.
Okay.
But Terrence and Taryn, thank you so much. I feel like that was so on brand for both of you. Lover and a fighter. Taryn always a lover and a fighter. When it comes to advocating for people, as Terrence just basically highlighted that you have done while you guys work together, I guess, how do you explore the idea of getting angry in situations when anger can become a disruption or a disruptive force, and being able to channel that anger into a transformative force? Like, how do you like practically do that in the moment?
I would love to hear Terrence do that because I know, like professionally having to navigate different
Yeah.
clients, personally, again, just multiple relationships. How? Yeah, that's great from you. I'll pass it off.
No, for sure. I would say anger, as to Terrence point, has been something that has kind of been the red throughout my life. And so when it comes to really anything, when it comes to the professional world, your romantic relationship, family, if you yourself are feeling anger about something, I kind of like to, there's usually obviously some sort of conflict going on. So for me, what I've learned to do with other folks, including myself, is to be more responsive than reactive and come from a place of curiosity and with yourself also, and then deal with the emotions first. You have to deal with, and anger is not a bad thing. It's what is how we operate and what we do with that anger, if and when it's misdirected. And so I think for me, acknowledging your anger, because you might have a right to be angry and it's okay to be angry, and I think it's okay to talk about that in a very responsive, in a way that will resonate with folks. So I would say first and foremost, acknowledging your anger. And I would say, and sometimes I've also, what I've done lately in the past few years is that I've said, is this for me, is like, is this something I really need to be angry about? And if I wait a day, then it usually wasn't that serious. But if it's something that I guess in like work or romantic, well, whatever it is, just having a dialogue about it, is because things don't, solutions or next steps don't happen in one conversation. They often happen over a course of conversations, including the ones you have with yourself.
Yeah, indeed. Well, Terrence, I think to wrap this up, I'd love to hear from each of you kind of what's things sort of stood out in our conversation. I'll start first. Um, Terrence, I loved your point about using fear as information to help be a compass to how you. Terrence, I really loved your idea around having fear be a compass or using it as information to help guide the direction that you go in and how you navigate the next steps in a situation. I really want to get us talking about what were some of the key sort of things that stuck with us throughout the conversation, right?
Mhm,
Fear as a compass, really reading the room and understanding, when it's a benefit to leverage fear as a thing to propel you forward,
mhm,
or when is it necessary to leverage fear to basically kind of check in with yourself?
mhm,
What are
mhm.
some key takeaways that you guys felt came through in the conversation?
For me, what Terrence said, it's like look at the information, look at the data. Like, that's a big thing, and you need to be able to look at to know which direction you're gonna go, whether and again, that data could be there's a reason you're feeling fear, so let's go what direction that's gonna go, or there's a reason to assess the data. I'm like, "You know what? I can step out and do this. I can speak up for myself," and using that to be fearlessness. So the big thing that I took away from what Terrence said in this conversation is, look at the data, look at the information to explore which direction you wanna go.
Yeah.
Terrence, what you got?
I would say something that you brought up, Taryn, and what we talk about is lean into our tribe. Is because it's, as a small business owner, as an entrepreneur, it's very easy to kind of isolate yourself and not know you're doing that. And time again, whether I'm at hanging out with friends or I'm at one of these like kind of association events or networking events that's like, for like Black young professionals, I'm always, everybody in that room needs each other. There's enough money and resources out here for everybody. And so like I would say definitely leaning in your tribe, and just always knowing that we all need each other. And I'm always not even reminded, because I know that, but that's always affirming to know when you work with good people, when you're friends with good people, when you kick it and run the streets with good people. We all need each other, and not even some kumbaya, but we really, really do. And that materializes in the work and then in the friendships and then in the connections that we have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all this transcends professional and personal. So, I hope that anybody that watches this just knows everything we're offering up here, use it in all facets of your life. All the like life's a stage. You play different characters. So whether you're a sibling, someone's child, a colleague, these are all things that we step into when engaging people, which is to live in fearlessness. At the end of the day, but it's how do you do it for yourself in all of the orbits that one revolves in. What we got? We
Amazing.
done? What we doing?
We're wrapping it up.
Mm.
Terrence, thank you so much. We're so grateful that you decided to spend some time with us today. I will see you outside this summer.
Mhm.
And thank
Be
you to our
outside.
viewers. Be outside. Thank you to our viewers and listeners. We appreciate you checking in with us and sticking through the conversation. And with that,
Nope, but not with that. Be sure to subscribe, watch, follow IG, Terrence, anywhere else you want to shout out people to go. Just look them up on IG. You'll find out.
Oh
You'll find
yes,
yourself
Terrence
yeah, where
too.
can they find you,
Chappell.
Terrence?
Yeah, find me. Send me a direct message. Call me maybe. I need to work on my call to action. Sorry, but this is a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank
Thank you. With
you.
that, this is it for Disrupt, Delete, Reset. We'll see you next episode.
See you next time.